have you heard of that? What is it? AMSASR thing where they whisper and they go like this and they make all these noises.
Oh, I've heard about that.
And they open stuff and they eat.
And they like it.
People like it. It's supposed to be relaxing.
What are you talking about?
It's called ASMR, I think. I'm serious.
It's a thing.
I've heard of this.
Yeah.
ASMR.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the show.
We are. And
we started.
We did.
It's not an ASMR podcast.
No. Today,
yeah,
we have with us Alex and Brett.
That's Alex.
I was looking at Alex.
Okay. I don't know about your screen direction on your cameras. So.
We got it all worked out.
Okay, does all make sense?
Yeah. So when we start intercutting, eye lines are going to be right on
Perfect.
there.
It's so cut in perfectly.
Because we're going to go for an editing award on this show.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we are, right?
I was just at the event this morning at the Egyptian Theater. It's all the Oscar-nominated editors. They have a panel. It's called Invisible Art, Visible Artists, and it's amazing to go to. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so they show clips of their movies, and then they talk about the process.
Mm-hmm.
Someday I'll be able to speak as intelligently as they do.
Oh, dude, you already do. You do a really great job, and I'm a big fan. Today's show is really all about the relationship between guys like you, what you guys do to get a movie done. Brett, in the case that we're working on, our current project together is your editing, right? Mm-hmm. And you directed it, right? So how this team turns into, over the long period, what the experience is once you've assembled the footage, how much leeway you give him, Brett, to do an editor's cut, then you do a director's cut, or where do you guys begin once you've got all of you, your shooting's over, right?
Painting a good picture here.
Go.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, go.
Yes, this is one of the things they don't teach you in film school.
Right.
Is really how to work with a team, and how you finish a movie.
Yeah.
And how you collaborate. My first feature, I was the editor, so
so you directed and edited?
My first feature, wrote, directed, edited.
Holy shit!
Paid for.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then Brett and I, Brett was the editor on my second movie, and so that's where we met. And I kind of didn't know what to expect because I was still pretty green filmmaker, and so we kind of discovered the process. And as it turns out, Brett has edited all but 2 of my movies.
Okay.
So now we know each other really well.
We kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
It does help.
Yeah. And we have, I think we get each other pretty well.
Did you realize early that this guy should be on the team?
It was too early to know that there was gonna be a team.
Uh-huh.
I think I was worried about being fired on the movie during the shoot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because that threat did come a couple of times. But I can tell you when we started working together, the things I discovered right away is that an editor is going to bring a perspective that every director is different. I tend to storyboard the movie in my head and know cut by cut how it's going to go together.
Yeah.
Which is it's good to have a plan, but the fact is you never exactly stick to that plan.
Right.
As you what's called shoot, and then as you edit, the whole thing about you write a movie 3 times. Mm-hmm. And so
give us an explanation of that, because this is for people who don't know the industry.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. So the saying is you write a movie 3 times. You write it in the script phase. You rewrite it then as you're shooting it with all the changes that the actors and the locations and everything. Suddenly money's gone and things like that happen, which happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And then the third time in the editing room, that's usually where the movie really is made.
Right. Okay.
So, it's good to have a plan and a point of view. But as I've learned, it's very important to have trusted opinions from what's called trusted collaborators to help you make the movie the best it can be.
Right.
And I just want to jump in and say that's why I enjoy our relationship, because he's not rigid coming into the edit saying this is how it has to be.
Right.
He's completely open to what I have to bring and what we discover together as we're, moving stuff around and trying things out.
I'm glad you brought that up, because where I sit into your team when we get to work together in sound, I feel that same exact leeway that you guys give me to, bring what I think some of that stuff should sound like, and you guys allow that to happen, and I love that. I think it only makes the whole project, like, all of our personalities are in there to some degree.
Well, you want creative people to let them do the thing that they love.
Right.
So why say, no, this is my way when they have something that's better than your way?
Uh-huh.
So let them do it.
And I think probably one of the most fun things is, like, sometimes Brett and I will strongly disagree on a scene, and and I think it should do this and that. Then he'll be like, and then like I'll cut it. I'll say, look, like this, and then he'll look at it and be like, well, that kind of sucks, but if you do this, and then like we go down a whole different path and we discover something new, and that's probably like one of the coolest things.
Yeah,
because I've never had a co-editor, so it's always been me.
Yeah,
but it is fun to pass material back and forth. And
do you find it difficult to let go of those reins?
No, not at all.
Have you worked with people that it is
right?
difficult?
I'm sorry?
Have you worked with people where they do have difficulty letting go of that?
Yeah. And then you're just a button pusher and you're doing what they want you to do.
Yeah.
That's tough in the mix room too, is when all you're doing is raising a level and not creating a soundscape of sorts, like where you can push the backgrounds to create the surrounding, and then as the scene gets more intimate, you can actually pull that stuff back and be more focused with what's happening on the screen. You know? It's very cool. Yeah, very cool. So let's go inside there for what's the time frame for your edit process? Like, do you get a production, you've shot it, now you're in editorial for 8 weeks?
Well, I want to say early on, before we really got to know each other, I made it a point to go to set, hang out, have lunch with him, trying to get an idea of what he's going for, so that when I go back and work on the material, I'm kind of getting a head start.
Right.
Because if oftentimes you don't visit set and you don't see what the director's aiming to do, you're kind of just relying on your own instincts and the material that's coming in.
Right.
So I really enjoyed going to set and visiting him, and it was nice that we were in the same location.
Sure.
And then after how many films together, I just knew what he wanted and knew what he was going for.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
How many have you done together again?
I'm gonna guess
9. This might be
9.
number 9.
Really?
I think so.
That's amazing. And have all of them been for Force Films?
No. The first. Well, geez.
Born to
I
Race
guess,
was.
just one wasn't.
yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
So Force Films is the film production team that you're a part of. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah,
because also
it's
Christine and John are part of the same
Who are they?
team. they were on the last podcast.
Oh.
So
I remember them.
have you not met them yet? So how would you say that? Is it a production team? What would you call it? How would you label it?
Yeah, it was really all. It started more with ESX and ESX Productions and Force Films are one and the same. Force Films is more of like the brand.
Okay.
But
And
we're-
ESX is the production company, basically.
Yeah.
So.
So actually, what was the question?
How does go.
Just is Force Film a film production company? Just to establish some assignment to the word Force Film when people when we're throwing that
I
word
got you.
around.
Yeah, no, I'm talking like
So
everybody is supposed to know all this.
It's for our
stuff.
listeners. Yeah.
I got you. No, Force Films is a film production company that mainly produces films that are what's called inspiring and what's the other way?
Well,
Inspiring, positive,
Uplifting.
and oftentimes because we have access to sports events that most people don't, we are able to go to the tracks. Like Bennett's War came out.
We do a lot. We've done a lot of motorsports movies and sports movies. So yeah, inspirational sports movies. So we've actually gone a little.
We're mixing it up a little.
Yeah, we're mixing it up a little.
Yeah.
So
No,
we
that's
just
fine.
work together on Wheels of Fortune,
Yeah.
which has the motorsports aspect, but it's a raunchy comedy. So.
Yeah, indeed it is. Indeed. What? So, getting back to the time frame, how long do you guys stay in the edit bay?
what is it,
Per day?
is it 3 months about, or is it?
Well, it depends on the budget. So it's determined by how many weeks I'm, I should say, how much time I get on it, then he'll kind of take over once my pay runs out.
Mm-hmm.
But usually I'm cutting while we're shooting, so 4 weeks there and then another 10 weeks afterwards to get to the point where we're ready to turn the director's cut
it's
over.
it's a little more than 3 months, right? About
Yeah.
14 weeks.
Yeah,
ish.
and it goes fast.
Yeah, and it depends. Depends on the movie. Some movies cut together quicker than others, and but even like American Wrestler, like that. I remember just because of the wrestling stuff that took
Yeah, no,
a
that
while.
was.
And how did you guys do pickup shots for the current thing we're working on?
Mickey Kelly, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So how often does that come into play, and does that ever set your 14 weeks off? Like you've got new footage, now you got to work that in, and that just adds more time.
We kind of know it's coming.
I see.
We lost a couple. I don't know, was it a day or so on the shoots? We knew it had to be picked up later anyhow, so
I
I
see.
kind of allowed that time.
I got you. And then how long, or not how long, but like at what point do you kind of go, okay, my part is done. Like I've done my creative cut, where I feel like, is your cut first, or do you do Alex's cut first? I mean, what's one and the same?
I feel like it's kind of now we've just merged, kind of, because we just we've been working together so long. Like I don't think there's ever like really a definitive like
Alex's cut.
Yeah, I think it's just get the movie to the best it can be at all times. It's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
How do you think? Do you think that functions well for a team? That's the way you want to work as a team. There's really. I know it's not to be cliche. There's no I in team, but obviously you're working towards the same goal. So it's not.
Yeah, and another thing. What's called. We do a lot of test screenings where I don't know. Let's say we have probably a group of 30 or 40 like people we trust who have constructive opinions,
And we'll kind of space them out. So we'll take like these 10 people to watch this cut, and then we'll digest what they've said, and then we'll bring in another 10 for the next cut, just to keep getting fresh eyes on
That's
what
smart.
we're up to. Yeah.
That's smart.
And it doesn't mean we take every note, but it's like if half the room is saying, hey, that one scene doesn't make sense, then you know that one scene probably doesn't make sense.
Right.
So it's very helpful. Some people are against test screenings. I think they help, as long as you don't cater to like the one weirdo who'll say, I didn't like the blue shirt on that guy in that scene, which happens.
What it does too is it allows you to watch an audience watch the movie, so you can see and feel when they start to get restless. So I'm thinking, well, we got to tighten this section up because people are losing interest.
Right.
And
So is that not a traditional practice? You say some people don't do it. Is that not something that most people do?
I don't know about the percentage, but I listen to podcasts with directors all the time, and I've definitely heard a couple who say I don't test movies, but I'm sure they still show it to a handful of trusted friends. I mean, I kind of think you can't.
what's crazy not to?
Yeah.
I mean, you get so blinders on after you've watched the thing I don't know how many times that you need that fresh opinion. So
Yeah, and plus there's some shots that read to you so clearly,
right.
but because you know everything about this movie, but then to like somebody new, they'll see this shot and it just won't read the same to them, and that's something you you can't predict that. That's another reason why it's important to have
You know
test
that
screenings.
I'm interested in that idea because I often run up. I won't say against because I understand what it's from, and it's what you're talking about. Is like you have put this little swag in the character that hopefully the actor has brought to the performance, right? And you know it's there, but someone who doesn't know that that is in there, if it's not coming across and that particular thing isn't reading, you got to reevaluate and figure out another way, right?
Yeah.
And so the way that often the way that we do that is we add ADR lines to help tell stories, right, and drive a story point home.
Should
right?
we explain to the audience what ADR is?
Actually, we have in previous
Okay,
podcasts,
okay.
but yes, that's again when there's either a story point to add or slightly change. If there's a technical difficulty on set, an airplane, a car horn that's not desirable,
Or a performance.
or a performance,
Yeah.
exactly. You
Yeah.
bring the talent back in and have them re-say these lines or say the ad lines to help to clean it all up. And that's what ADR is. And it stands for something that's really antiquated, I think, is automatic dialogue replacement. It's not automatic.
No,
It's-
not at all.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be called looping as well.
Yeah. And
Because
they would make 3-foot loops and it would just circle around and they
Repeat,
would
repeat,
Yeah,
yeah.
hear and repeat, hear
Oh,
and
that's
repeat.
why it's called looping.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I'll
Yep.
tell for the audience here a perfect couple of movies where you can spot ADR is Ted and Ted 2. Because I noticed in both those movies, they try to add jokes wherever they could. So there'll be times when the characters like aren't on screen or like their mouth isn't on screen, and they'll just throw a line in there. Like
Right,
I remember
right.
they're like in one of them, they're like walking up the stairs, and they just threw this line, and I'm like, clearly an afterthought, but really funny.
well, and also catch an ADR line coming at it from an editor standpoint, where I'll think that's a really important line. Why wasn't it on screen? And I'm like, well, it must be ADR
Yeah.
to clarify something.
Right.
So many times I'm be like, oh, that's interesting that they didn't get that point across.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge part of filmmaking, and the average person like myself doesn't realize that it's done afterwards. You think it's all happening right there, while you're filming, but it's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that just made me think of something, Brett, where do you craft a scene
I'm crafty.
thinking, I know you are, buddy, thinking that when we add this is going to make this edit work? You know what I mean? If we add this one line, that'll let this edit that I think will work, but it doesn't kind of work because we don't have the.
Well, you got to make it feel natural in the flow of the scene. So if
I'm talking about like making a performance, let's say, right? The scene is a little bit clunky, but that's what you've got.
right,
And so you guys go, hey, if we added this line, this will totally fix that and correct that.
I remember something like that when we did The Dog Lover. It was the scene where Will's on the horse. He just rescued Sarah, and they're on that horse, and we just couldn't get the continuity exactly right because it's a horse, and it was kind of doing its own thing a lot, including trying to kick the actors off of it one time. Luckily, our actor was actually really good on the horse, so he kept him under control. But I just remember like we needed to like join these lines, and we just I think we ended up having him ADR it later, so it kind of joined two shots together. That if you heard the original dialogue, the tone was completely different.
Sure.
But the mouth, is moving the same, so it worked.
Right, right. I so many scenes in my head go by where I've recorded the ADR as well, and on the spot we'll like renegotiate the line, rewrite the line or whatever. Where the one very recently, like 2 days ago, we had an actress come back in this one particular shot, and it's a great movie. This one shot that the director had a problem with was there was two things to look at. There was a locker to look at on the left and the door to a school, the entrance to the school on the right. And they were both in frame, and you kind of didn't know what to look at. My eye kept going towards the door. And so I turned around and asked him, I said, hey, shouldn't we say something to get to look at the shrine on the locker? Because that's really the story point, is something had happened in the story, and then this young woman had spontaneously blown up. It's fantastic stuff.
What?
Yeah. And so we had this girl ADR a line that actually made your eyes look over to what you're supposed to look at. And
That's
so
awesome.
I think about those things, like, you know, where you gotta kind of revamp the thought to get it to work. And
You're clearly still making the film in this area,
Yeah.
right, in sound and all
Yeah.
of that, obviously.
Yeah.
But
We also use it as a tool for our sports movies because, and at the panel this morning for Ford versus Ferrari, they were talking about the first scene with Christian Bale at Willow Springs.
Yeah.
And when they got the footage in and they assembled the scene, they said, this feels like he's only done one lap. How are we going to solve it? And I kind of laughed because we've gone through this
So many times.
so many times. And what their solution was is what we do is we had an announcer explaining the lap number and where they are in the
Right.
race.
Yeah.
And so it was actually the editor's voice that they used in the movie.
Oh, really?
Kind of cracked me up.
oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no, sometimes that is the best, the simplest and the best solution.
Sure.
It's just, we're on lap 57. And it's like, it goes by
Yeah.
and no problem.
and it just fits part of the scene because,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there are announcers that tell
And
you.
even though you haven't necessarily seen a time cut going from lap 42 to lap 57, in your head you go, oh, okay, some time has passed, you
Yeah.
know, right?
yeah. At what point did you guys you said you've done 9 films together. At what point did it start to feel really cohesive between the two of you as you were working together? When did you just know? Did
Pretty
you know?
quick.
I think from the first movie.
Yeah,
I just
I don't remember not like being cohesive. So
yeah, it was there's just what it is there's no ego in the editing room.
Shocking
So-
in this town.
Yeah. So any idea is fair game.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to voice what you feel, and don't be hurt if your idea doesn't work.
Right.
And
Right.
so that I've had that problem so many times where someone that feels, you know, I know
They
I'm the
know
filmmaker,
best.
do it my way.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I think we just have a
Do you get not good results when that's the case? Are the results just different, or is it just not fun?
Well, it's not fun, and you don't feel like you're being appreciated for the skills
ideas
that you
that you
bring.
have.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I think David Armstrong in our very first podcast, David launched with us, but he had said that why would I think that I could make the best movie available when all of these people have these creative ideas that I get to take credit for?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
You
You know,
know,
here's something that blew me away is what's called a friend does what is it, pre-visualization stuff. So for the audience, that's like basically when you do like an animation of a scene, it's usually for big action stuff. And you do like an
Oh,
animation.
they're called animatics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's called this way, you know, they can figure out like how they're going to do this big, you know, all this action. And, you know, without, you know, before they spend any money or do anything, they
Sure.
do that. And my friend had said that he had done some work for Steven Spielberg, and that he was surprised that Steven Spielberg, you know, basically said to him, like, show me something, like basically like, you know, he gave him leeway to, like, you know, give me some ideas.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my God, if even Spielberg, like,
Right.
you know, is like open to other people giving ideas for where to put the camera, it's like, that was a lesson. Like,
Sure.
I always remembered that.
Sure.
You know, that's ultimate no ego, because that dude, like, you know, he deserves to have an ego.
Sure. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think dropping the ego is probably the biggest part in being a team. I mean, of course, we've seen successful teams all in sports, especially. There's lots of ego. There's still success there, but I think you have to have a common goal. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start getting into editing? I don't think we talked about that too much on the panel that you were on. What was your beginnings in editing?
You didn't go to film school, right?
I did not go to film school.
There's another one for no
Yeah.
school.
Well,
we have hash lines for who's gone to school and who hasn't.
Yeah, just
It's
so you
pretty
know,
even so
I
far.
vote you don't need film school.
Okay, there's 2 and 1.
Well, so my film school was the Roger Corman School of Film. So I grew up in Nebraska and I moved out to LA in '93 with an internship at Roger Corman's. So I worked 6 months for free just to learn different aspects of the business. But I always knew I wanted to get into editing because once I found out there was someone that puts the movie together, that's the perfect job for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was an apprentice editor, and then I was an assistant editor for a year, and then jumped into the
That's a pretty short.
editing chair. Yeah,
Dude,
there
that's
was
awesome.
there was so much going on at that time. So you're just
At Corman.
Yeah,
Yeah, we used to do a bunch of his movies.
yeah. So you get the opportunity to learn fast, and not only are you not paying for school, you're getting a little money and credit on actual movies.
Right.
So I'm sad that there isn't something like that today. Where people can go and say, yeah, I want to learn how to be a filmmaker.
Right.
At what point did you feel like you were getting really proficient at it? Like you started to really sense what needed to happen when a film came across your desk?
I mean, everyone, it's a process. You really, what's the thing, the 10,000 hour
10,000
rule?
hours, yeah.
I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, you really got to put the time in the seat to learn your craft, and I've cut a lot of movies, so I'm very comfortable now. But I remember first starting out, I'm like, I don't know what to cut to next, or so I had to rely on the director heavily early on because I was just figuring my technique out. So
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think you had more success early on with something like sitting around a round table like this and cutting between people? Or doing like an action thing, cutting a little car chase or something? Did you like go, oh, I get the timing of this, was one aspect easier than the other? Did you go, oh shit, I need to hone in this aspect a little better?
Well, it's all about telling the story clearly so the audience can follow, what you're trying to say.
Did someone say that to you?
No, you just kind of learn
Right.
as you go what's not working and why isn't it working. So then you start figuring it out. Action scenes can be really difficult because, especially like gunfights, you got to figure out if you're going to cross the line. I don't know how technical to get here, but
go get
Cross the
yeah, so you got to make sure the audience understands which direction this guy's shooting and which direction this guy's shooting. And if they actually look like they're shooting the same direction, you can flop the shot so they're pointing at each other again.
Right.
We just did that on the podcast.
We did that last week, when we
You
recorded.
flopped a shot.
We did.
Yeah. It was weird. I was looking away from everybody.
Our guest was over here, and we were both looking like,
Yeah, we were
like out this way.
Completely disinterested in what they had to say.
Yeah, totally not interested. Now, it's the weird thing about this though is when we're both looking at you guys on our camera, it looks like we're looking at each other.
Right.
But you can't really change that with multiple angles
Yeah,
like that.
right.
But
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. I would think that action shots would be the most difficult to cut. I mean, I've never done. I've done a little bit of editing, but nothing spectacular. But it's fun. I found it to be incredibly fun.
Super fun. I mean, you're getting a ton of footage too because
You have-
action is how many cameras are rolling at the same time,
Right.
and
It's better to have more footage, right? 'Cause
Absolutely.
then you can save a scene. If you don't have enough, right? Then
yeah, then you're repeating shots or you're
what do you
you're
do?
cutting to something that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Just like ooh.
yeah.
Or the good old reframing a shot.
Reframing. Well, that's a lot easier to do now because
Yeah.
we shoot in such.
What
high
does that mean?
resolution.
Reframing a shot.
So just sometimes you don't have the shot you need, but so you take a different shot. Let's just say it's a car coming around a corner, and I need this car coming around the corner fast, and I don't have it. So, but I do have a shot of it just kind of coming around the corner slow.
I gotcha.
So
you speed it up.
So I could do two things. Yeah, is speed it up, and sometimes it works and doesn't look cheesy. And if you crop in tighter, then you don't have you have less static stuff in the image, and it looks like the car's moving faster. So that's just one example.
Or you can
that's a
do
good example.
a push in on it too to give it more movement.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like a zoom.
Like it's like the camera's coming towards it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and everybody
that.
every movie, the Avengers does that. Like it's done all the time.
Right.
It's just a little technique. It's a little tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
Little tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
So, Alex, when did you get into directing? Did you have some editing, obviously, because you guys work together on that and kind of pick up where each other leaves off. When did you get into directing? What got you into film to begin with?
Sergio Leone and Star Wars.
There you go.
So I grew up in France. I'm French originally, and I saw.
Not anymore.
You're our third Frenchman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw Sergio Leone movies on the French TV, and those were the first movies that made me realize you can put the camera in a very specific place, because that's what he does. He has those shots where you have like half of a guy's face, like right up to the lens. Then you have this huge landscape in the background, and those were the first movies where I'm really noticing, what he's doing with the camera. And then like everybody else, I saw Star Wars, and I was just like, oh my God. And that's when I asked my mom, I'm like, who does that? And she's like, the director. And I said, that's what I want to do.
There you go.
It's funny because that's actually the movie that got me thinking, man, I really want to be a storyteller, a filmmaker.
Yeah, us and, man, 5,000
everyone,
other people.
Yeah. It's funny when you mention Star Wars to filmmakers, their eyes will light up and say, oh, that's the movie that got me inspired.
I have a big Millennium Falcon sitting right above my desk at home.
Is it your creative space where it lives?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was another thing from Star Wars. The Millennium Falcon's like the weirdest ship. It's
It
like
is.
every other ship was
fly?
Well, it was just was sleek, looked like a wedge or something. This
Yeah.
thing looks like a hamburger with a pod on the side, but it's somehow really cool. And I just thought, how did this guy imagine this thing?
Right.
Now if you learn the truth, it turns out that it was kind of like a last minute thing. They were going to do something totally different. They couldn't do it. So it's like, well, here's the next best thing.
That's funny.
You
Huh?
just ruined the movie.
Alex, ladies and gentlemen. My tie into Star Wars is my daughter's grandpa mixed it.
What?
Don,
Star Wars.
Yes,
Right, yeah, you
Don
told me about
McDougal.
this. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
Wow.
he was. This is a story I've told before.
The sound in Star Wars was next level.
He won an Academy Award.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I have an editing Star Wars story in a second. But
Okay.
it's yours first.
He's
this
the
is
one
the
who
rest of the
actually-
podcast is talking about Star Wars.
He got me into the post production.
Wow.
He was like,
awesome.
long story short, how are you taking care of my granddaughter? I got you a job interview. Don't F it up. And I went to the interview and got it and just moved on from there. But that's my Star Wars tie.
TIE Fighter.
TIE Fighter, X-Wing.
So I just heard a podcast with the editor, one of the editors on Star Wars. I'm like brain farting on which one right now, but he said that.
There are a few. So.
Yeah, the reason Darth Vader has his own version of a TIE Fighter is because he was saying, well, when we cut to, the
Which
battle,
one is he? Yeah.
which one is he?
Yeah.
And suggested maybe make his look different. And supposedly that's how Darth Vader's TIE Fighter came to be.
Wow.
They folded the wings and made it darker.
Huh.
Yeah, because how would they know which one he's in? That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because they're not all black.
They're white, aren't they? White?
No, they're gray.
Gray.
Yeah, with the
Oh,
straights.
okay. Shows you what I know about Star Wars.
We're done talking.
Aren't they? Aren't they pink? So not we all, but you can kind of guess how an actor becomes an actor, right? You take a class, you start going on auditions. How do you become a director? How does
This is
it's-
important
it's-
information
it's-
for me.
Right. Also, it's kind of almost the same question of we know how you can be a baseball player, but how do you become a coach? Right. It's kind of the same thing. How do you become a director, what path do you take for that to become the thing that you end up doing?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I think everybody's got a different path, but I can tell you one thing is like you just got to start doing it because it's because.
But what does that mean? How do you just start doing it?
It's like if you want to direct, usually it's like you want to tell stories. And
Make a short film.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Okay.
Yes, I mean now, oh my God, it's so easy now.
Yeah.
Now, our
Right.
freaking phones
Yeah,
are
yeah,
better
yeah.
than like cameras we we
Yeah,
used to buy.
Right.
Like now, anybody can make. I mean, I can edit it on my phone.
Yes,
Like,
I do
it's
editing for
insane.
this show
Wait,
on
that's
my
my
cell
job.
phone.
So-
Yeah,
Taking Brett's job away.
but I mean, yeah, basically, you just got to start doing it. And I just remember, I think my first stuff was like in high school. I finally got my hands, some friend, now this is like late 80s, early 90s. Some friend had a video camera, which I didn't have a video camera. So we shot some stuff. I had a class. Gosh, I still have this. So yeah, I'm a big car nut. If the audience doesn't know that,
Okay, good.
because cars
We'll
are going
talk
to come
about
up a
that.
lot. Yeah, and so like one of the first things I shot in high school was a short film about two pizza delivery guys racing to the same house.
Fun.
Yeah, one guy in a Honda CRX and the other guy in a Chevy El Camino.
Oh boy.
They're both played by my buddies.
Let me guess which one.
El
Which
Camino.
one?
Honda.
Which one won? Which one got the pizza there?
Yeah.
Geez, did they tie?
Oh,
They
the
mi-
El Camino all the way.
Yeah, I forget, but I remember like it was my first, like I played it for the class and like everybody cracked up and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It was like my first short film that kind of came out and like didn't suck.
Right.
I'd done like a couple other like rough ones. We're talking, these are like 3 to 5 minute films. They're
Right.
super short.
Which is very hard to tell a complete story in that amount of time. So it's
True.
it's
True. But I'll say I bet you that's where you got the fondness for the focus testing. Playing it for your class and kind of seeing like, oh yeah, okay, this worked or this didn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I need to change this or
But
something.
I definitely needed like a more like, I had like some sort of big laughs in there. I forget, but just very broad humor kind of jokes. But definitely like if you look at it, the filmmaking wasn't very specific. It was just like, let's just say my framing was a little bit all over the place. Looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course.
Now, actually, this is a really interesting topic. Like do-it-yourselfers. Okay, what's the wheelchair thing?
for a dolly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Explain that. Like,
Well, explain what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking
well,
about.
so like a do-it-yourself person would be you and I. We're going to make a little short film, right?
Of course, yeah.
And we don't have a budget to rent this thing called a dolly, right?
Right.
And so what we would use is a person
On a wheelchair.
on a wheelchair holding the camera steady and making the camera move, but it's staying focused or not in focus.
You're
but
using the
hopefully
wheelchair
You're
to
using the
move the
wheelchair
camera.
to move the camera.
Right.
So how does this stuff come to be? Out of necessity? Out of
Oh, yeah.
like, holy shit,
Oh.
how do we fix this?
Totally
Now
out of
with
necessity.
the drones now
we've
here, we
used-
don't have to get cranes so often.
that's
Or
you know?
even just the Steadicam rigs that they have now are amazing.
Excuse me, Ma. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to say the S word. Mrs. Hedlund.
Man, we've
Sorry.
we've used cars as dollies. We've used even what's it called, little 4x4 thing.
The mules.
Yeah, we used the
yeah,
mules as dollies.
Yeah. Now, how do you get it steady? I mean, or do you not?
Well, it
And
depends on the
that's-
shot. If it's
Yeah.
an action shot,
Yeah, really-
shake it up.
Shake it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally depends. But just to finish on the whole thing of like, how do you get to direct?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
See, he's a storyteller. He'll bring it back.
What's called? Because I mean, it's a question I'm asked a lot. Like, probably like over the last 10 years, it's like a handful of times somebody has some friend has or family friend has said, "Hey, I have a daughter, nephew, somebody who wants to be a filmmaker. Can you like have lunch with him and talk to him?" Like that's actually happened quite a bit.
I've had that too.
And
for sound.
And so you to be a director, you have to just do it. You have to shoot little short films, with your iPhone. What's called I know Brett loves to roam around with his camera, with his still camera, and take pictures. This is like a regular thing he does.
Yeah.
And this is where he probably fine tunes his his shots and everything. I think the toughest thing is to work with actors consistently. That's something I wish I could do more of. So it's like every time I get a new project, it's like I kind of got to warm up. I actually have notes because there's a couple of directing actors books I really like that have super helpful stuff, and I've taken notes, and I always go back to certain key things. But what I would tell everybody, the other thing I want to get to is basically you can't practice being on a set, what's called being in charge of basically the camera, the actors, the background, the everything. You can't practice it without just doing it.
Right.
But be prepared when you're on that set, because when all the shit starts flying at you, you got to remember what's the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and all of those things flying at you are small to big fires where something's wrong, and you got to go, okay, well, we could do it like this, right? Staying calm, but moving the story forward and getting the shots, right?
Yeah, because if everyone's looking to you to be the captain of the ship, and if you're freaking out, then they're going to freak out.
Right.
But
So how do you prepare for something that this intangible,
who gives you a
unpainted
chance,
thing?
right?
What's that?
Who gives you the chance? Okay, so I shoot all the stuff.
Yeah,
we shoot all the
right.
stuff on our phone, and we edit it together, and it's bitchin'. And it's cool, and we put music together for it too, because we can,
Right.
right?
How do you
But
how
what-
do you,
who
how do you
goes-
turn that into
you know
a
what,
career?
But what are
Couples
you
should
making?
have a-
What are you doing narratives, or what's your short films of?
Well,
Well, he's using hypothetical.
I'm
but
hypothetical, but I would say, the story of a lone guy walking down the street to get to his gig, and he runs into these weather conditions that prevent him from getting there. But his perseverance, I'm writing this off the top of my head, his perseverance gets him to the gig.
yeah,
How does that turn into
getting regular jobs.
He says, my partner, he says he should direct a movie. Let's
Yeah.
give him a shot. You know what I mean? How does that transform into
a gig?
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
So let me start with Brett's case. I mean, you've edited 50 movies, right?
Well, yeah.
That's some footage?
I remember you telling me that one time, and
Yeah.
I was like, holy
I
shit,
think
that's a lot.
I think we've cleared 60 now. So
Wow,
yeah.
okay. So, so Brett, I mean, he knows how a movie's put together, and I know he's been on a ton of sets, and from, doing so many movies with him, it's like I know he has good taste, and I know he knows how it all works. And so when our production company was going to do The Stand at Paxton County, our boss Allie asked me, hey, do you think Brett can do it? And I said, oh yeah, Brett can totally do it. It's like I can just tell he doesn't say anything that makes me think he hasn't said any red flags. There's a lot of people who say red flags as soon as some theoretical filmmaker says oh, I know everything about filmmaking, then right there I'm like, okay, you're going to have problems.
Right, right.
Because you have to go into it willing to learn, willing to collaborate, and being able to put your ego aside, and
but what you're alluding to is it's networking,
that's part of it.
Proximity.
Well, every opportunity is going to be unique to the person.
Yes.
So
absolutely,
you got to find your way and just don't give up. So like Alex's first film, he paid for it himself.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get to. I think in my case is, so I had co-written a script with my buddy Steve called Born to Race, which is the first movie Brett and I worked on together. We wrote this right after film school. This was the first feature film both of us had written, and I attached myself as director. I'm like, this is what's gonna hopefully get me somewhere. And basically we couldn't get it made for a while, and I was doing a bunch of short films, and I'd done like 7 short films. I'm like, I'm kind of done with shorts. It's like I want to tell a longer story.
Sure.
So that's when I broke out 3 credit cards and made my first feature called Knuckle Draggers. It cost me $100,000.
Woo.
Yeah,
And it's good.
and
That's
Yeah.
cool, man.
Yeah.
basically nobody really saw it. It just got like barely announced as distribution. But what it did do is that the thing is like I finished it. I wrote it. I executed the film. I edited it together. I finished the freaking thing. And this is big because there's so many talkers in Hollywood. And I finished it. And when we met with George, who financed Born to Race, he's like, so, you want to direct this? And so I know I was about to do his voice, and I had done a short film about street racing, which looked like really, it looked pretty polished.
Cool.
And with my feature film Knuckle Draggers, it was basically talking heads. It was a romantic comedy. So, and just in the trailer, like the producer saw 2 things. He saw that I finished the damn thing, and he saw just in the trailer, he said, "I can tell you know how to work with actors. Okay, you can direct it." It was literally that. He didn't even watch the movie. So
Right.
that's what's called, and that was literally so
think about
like 3 years of work, $100,000 of money to lead to like my first, just a guy saying yes to hiring me for my first official directing job.
well, there's your student loan.
Yeah.
Well, he's got 2 student loans
Well,
now.
yeah, no, I was fortunate that my parents paid for my film school, but and as much as I enjoyed film school, especially now with freaking YouTube, with directors' commentaries, like you do not need to pay to learn how to make a movie. Like the way Brett did it is better. To actually go get an internship somewhere and
Hands-on, man.
Yeah,
Right?
hands-on. Do it for free or get paid to learn. Like
Yeah.
that's the way to do it.
And I mean, film school is good, I think, for creating beginning your network, because they're going
Very
to
true.
go out
Yeah.
into the world and
'Cause
keep in touch with those people.
My gaffer on my first real short film, The Last Race, another car movie, which was after my first documentary, which is a documentary about street racing.
About cars.
Yeah.
He likes cars.
But my gaffer on my thesis film in film school has become my DP, my director of photography on every feature film that I've done. Since
Building
then.
the team, man.
And he
network,
was also
yeah.
my DP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And both on Mickey Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Stand at Paxton
Yeah.
County.
Yeah.
Gorgeous looking.
He's amazing.
yeah, absolutely gorgeous
Too
stuff.
bad he's such an asshole.
Yeah, freaking Ruben, man. Yeah, no, Ruben's great.
That's cool. Can we talk about Mickey Kelly?
Yeah.
We can. Okay, so this one is near and dear to me just because of the sporting aspect of it, which is Brazilian
Sure.
Jiu-Jitsu, right? And I was never very good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I quit football because I got hit too hard when I was a kid, and then at 40 at 38 I started doing martial arts. 40 I had my very first mixed martial arts fight. So this sport, I've seen it as somebody that's not very good at it, and then somebody who like the lead in Mickey Kelly, who is incredibly knowledgeable and a very high level athlete, right? So for me, when I screened that movie with you guys, that was the most important thing for me to watch, to make sure that there was continuity inside the grappling.
It's authentic.
And it is totally.
Yeah.
It is 100% very well done and put together. And can we say the actor's name?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No, just to give people a little more context. So Mickey Kelly, what's called is the story. It takes place in the 1990s during the rise of MMA, but before MMA was a thing. When
It's
people
still underground kind of.
people didn't really know what jiu-jitsu was yet. It wasn't in the mainstream, and it's about what's called this down and out fighter who. Well, actually, let me take that back. It starts with a guy who's an unknown fighter, and fights aren't sanctioned yet, and there's these underground fights going on. they're in Dubai, this was a real thing that happened. Sheiks would basically
finance these.
Yeah, would just put on these
right?
private sporting events. Hey, that one guy in Africa, that one dude in Japan, I want to see those two fight. You just bring them over, put them in a ring in a tent in the middle of the desert, and and have them fight, no rules. And so it's about a guy who's really good, who takes, who agrees to fight in one of these tournaments. And he beats the first two guys, and then the last guy cheats and sucker punches him, and basically
Marco Blaine.
and hurts him pretty bad, and basically
destroys his career.
Yeah, destroys his career. And then years later, a video leaks of the fight that nobody knew.
This is at the beginning of the internet, right?
Yeah,
like
yes.
early
right at the start of the
internet.
internet. A video of this fight leaks. Nobody knew that there was a video, and it leaks, and then it gets out. Now the bad guy, Blaine, who has now become a champion in the now legitimate sport of MMA.
Wow.
Is shown to. He's
Scandal.
supposedly undefeated, but now because of this video, it shows that potentially he sucker punched this guy because he knew he wasn't going to win that fight.
That's right.
So Mickey Kelly is offered a rematch. But all the while he's hiding this life-threatening injury that he has.
Right.
So will he take the match and get his?
He's got a wife and kid, and he's got a
That's a beautiful story too.
Yeah.
The romance, the love story of how they met, and I just love that when you can intertwine an emotional attachment to a cool sports story.
Well, it raises the stakes.
Totally. And she is a beautiful. I haven't ever seen her before, but she's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's great.
Gorgeous. What's her name?
Katrina Bowden.
Man.
She was on 30 Rock. That's where a lot of people know her from.
Okay.
But you were talking about the what's called the realism of the fighting. So the project came about when I was introduced to Sean Patrick Flannery, who had this idea for this project.
Okay.
He's been into martial arts. I think he said since he was like 9 years old.
Right.
And so he used to do kung fu, and then when he discovered Brazilian jiu-jitsu, he fell in love like in 2 seconds. Basically I think he said he literally stopped working for a year or something like that, and just trained.
Wow.
And now he's a black belt, and I believe he's got 2 schools where he teaches Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that's so in the movie he's doing all his own fighting.
Yeah.
And I mean it's
as an editor I'm so thankful for.
Yeah, we never have to cut around his face or anything. It's the real guy doing it the whole time.
And I'll tell you, he's. I don't even know how old he really is, but at that time he's in his mid-40s, right?
Yeah.
At the last event.
Yeah.
Dude, he's in killer shape.
Yeah.
I mean, shredded, which is always fun for a guy to go, dang, man, I wish I could be like that, So getting back to let's talk about getting this idea off the ground. This is something that he approaches you on. We had a friend in common. My friend Paul had known Sean for years. I think since Boondock Saints 1, and basically when Sean had written a treatment for this story, and wanted to hire a screenwriter to fully flesh it out, and so Paul told him about me. I had written a Western at the time, and Sean read the Western, liked it, so he hired me to write the script with him, and so we wrote this together, very much based on his premise, and
But how many years ago was this?
This was in 2012. Yeah, 2012.
So it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
No,
and that's another story of sticking with it for years.
This is honestly, I've come to find that is the norm. This isn't wow, it took 8 years. That's most scripts is what I find to be the truth. Even my Western, which I wrote 10 years ago, and I sold a couple years ago. I think it might actually happen, like in the,
Breaking
let's
news?
just say, no, not yet, but I just,
it's a great script. I
just,
can't wait.
Cool.
I can see, by the way, it's called The Girl with No Name, and it's out right now as a comic book, if you want to look it up.
Yes,
All right.
it's very cool.
I just see things building, and I think it's soon going to become a movie.
This
So
is
you said
something
you
that
sold that? You sold it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's been made into a film yet.
I just sold the script to what's called production company.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, we talk. I don't know how much you made on that, right? But you sell it now. Does it when it does become a movie? Does any more money come from that, or are you just hoping to sell?
Everybody has a different deal, and here I'm going to blow people's minds, and I'm going to tell you. So, Born to Race, like my first script that I co-wrote with my buddy Steve Sarno.
Steve.
We
Shout out.
what's called we were first timers, and the movie was done for a tiny little budget. Yeah, we were paid like next to nothing for that script. But it
As
gave
was
us,
the editor.
But people would be shocked, like how little we did get. But
it's interesting too
got
that
things started.
that
Sure.
sometimes it's not about the money. It's about the project you're working on and how
The opportunity. Yeah.
and just to work on something cool. So
I
course
can totally
that's the case.
agree with
Of course
that.
that's the
take a
case.
pay cut just
Yeah.
to, that's how we met. So
Right.
that shaped my.
Well, I think Michael and I can both agree on that. We've played music for free way more than we've ever been paid for it.
I will say
Um,
I played last night and got paid.
Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
I'm rich.
But I've played most of 95% of the gigs that I've played were for free, and a lot of them, because I was in original bands, were exposure gigs. You're just trying to get exposure. So you do have to love it. You have to do it. You're doing it for fun mostly.
Yeah.
There comes a point where that starts to tip, right? You're like, okay, now it's time to start getting paid for these efforts. And when you don't, you're like, all right, well, let's move along here.
Right.
You're willing to donate your time less and less.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work. I mean, as
is.
we all know. But
Hey, I want to touch back on this. There's actually something that I struggle with my music, and that
I
is
thought we were talking about your drinking.
with my drinking.
is I feel like, and this is going back to what you were talking about, is like the time that it takes to get a project written and then completed is several years.
Yeah.
And it's relevance, right? Like I feel like when I, a year ago, last 2 weeks ago, a year ago, 2 weeks ago, I recorded 11 songs.
Yeah.
And I've
Okay.
only got 2 finished.
Right.
In my head, when I do this, I go and I get my homies in Michigan and we get in the studio and hunker down for 3 days and we record old school. We go to tape and we're doing all playing live together. The intention behind it is to get it and keep the momentum going and get back here. When I have all the tracks, I start mixing. I do my vocal overdubs and whatever else is needed to get done to get it finished. In a short amount of time, life starts to happen, and I go, "Oh, I'll get to it next weekend. Oh, I'll get to it next weekend." And now, a year plus
You're
later,
writing new songs.
I'm writing better songs that I need to record and get those sons of guns done.
That's it.
But I need to have completion on the thing that I did a year ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you?
I do. I really, truly do. That was a big effort.
You had to go all the way to Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah, Grand Rapids, Michigan to River City Studios with Roy Wallace, my high school buddies,
Some
longtime
shout-outs, right?
friends. Yeah. Oh, and Gibson and
You're just greasing your audience.
yeah, there you go.
Doing.
There you go. Do you ever feel?
Like relevance. So you wrote it You wrote it 9 years ago. Finally, it's
Do you have to adapt it for?
yeah.
Like you wrote it at
Well, it was
in
a period piece, so that helps.
That's
yeah, but
different.
it's funny
A
though.
Western,
It's still totally relevant if you think about everything that's going on in the news, because it's about a girl. It's about a female gunslinger.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, who's the relevant female gunslinger?
Well, I'm just saying with the whole Me Too thing going on.
Understood.
It's very much, it's a realistic, gritty Western about basically a girl that goes on a quest for revenge.
Yeah.
But she's not some chick with just like big boobs and two guns. It's like she's a real person grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Who somehow is going to take on like a band of outlaws. And,
The Weinstein.
So yeah, that is relevant. That's
It is.
very
do you
relevant.
ever notice like you may have to, if you wrote it 6 years ago and it's getting shot now, you might have to like adjust certain
we're
things.
going through that right now with this potential project. But let's probably not get into it. But we have this potential action project, and let's just say that we may need to adjust who the bad guys are.